almost every film, every major film about the war, every major textbook about the war completely leaves out, some very, very important aspects of the war that are really, in which Africa plays a major role. And so that was what led us to this project.
Discussions of race in World War II tend to focus on German racial policies. And of course, there's been discussion about how race shaped the decisions that were made about Japan and the use of the A bomb. But race played out on the ground in many different ways in Africa. So African soldiers did not receive the same pay or benefits as European soldiers. One of the contributors in our book talks about Eritrea, where German policies, there was a big discussion as to what to do with Italian racial policies, rather, in those areas where the Italians had controlled. And because of the discourse around race and Jews, Italian laws that applied to Jews were rescinded, but the racial laws that applied to Africans were maintained. South Africans didn't want African soldiers buried with white soldiers, so even there, apartheid, in a sense, played out as well. African soldiers weren't allowed to go to the same social spaces where European soldiers were allowed to go. And there are many stories where, in fact, some of the prisoners of war, the Italian prisoners that were captured in North Africa, were given better work conditions than some of the African soldiers.
In some places where they use forced labor, the French were especially strong on using forced labor. Women were also conscripted to work, doing the same kinds of rough labor in construction of roads, building these airfields. They had to come work for this to the same extent that men did.
You had women who were combatants and fought with the Ethiopians, with the Ethiopian forces in the battlefield. Some of them led troops, but you also had women who were acting as spies, who were carrying munitions and information back and forth. In those port cities in particular, where you had this large military population, this large military presence, the sex trade followed that too. And there had been a sex trade before in a number of different places, but you saw a tremendous expansion of this during the period of the war itself.
Both of us are African historians, and we both were working on a project in the 40s, and so that brought us into the war. And then we just sort of, as an experiment, we said, let's see if anyone is really thinking about World War II in African history. And that's partly because African historians treat the war as a prelude to decolonization. And we were getting hints from our own work that it was much bigger than that. So we're hoping that our book will change the way that that the war is taught, and really sort of include Africa as an important part of it.